working towards menstrual equity, it's an action that calls us beyond a mere acknowledgement and into creating transformative, tangible change. But in order to do this, we must continue to listen to Indigenous and Black communities, to people of color, to uplift their voices and to incorporate their wisdom into our efforts. In doing this, we're called to confront the historical injustices that have marginalized so many voices and to ensure that we're working actively to redress these wrongs. Working in menstrual equity and breaking down stigmas around periods is also a really empowering movement. It gives us an opportunity to connect deeper with ourselves and the world around us. Indigenous wisdom teaches us that connecting with our cycle, with our moon time, it's a way of coming home to ourselves. And so as we honor this, we affirm our dedication and our commitment to building a more just and equitable society, one where each individual has access to the resources that they need to live with dignity and autonomy. And in doing so, we also respect our ancestors and those who have come before us, those who have done the work so that we can stand here today to work for the well-being of future generations. And so today, we invite these conversations to be led with the spirit of respect, dignity, care, collaboration, and of course, mutual learning as we all strive to a better future. And I've had an absolute pleasure, the pleasure of working with Lisa along with Haley Newman-Petroshin, Maria Kidaraga from CSU, and of course, my wonderful colleague and partner in crime, Gabby Zabo, who is a health promotion specialist here at Concordia. And together, it's been the last 3 years that we've been working on menstrual equity efforts.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Jillian, Gabby, and I met because of email, right? Yeah, you know that thing. And a really wonderful invitation to get involved in what's happening at Concordia. And I'm an alumni here, so that was really exciting. I always love to reconnect with the places where I've learned things that have impacted me. And so it's a real pleasure to be back here today and working with all of you. We have a pretty awesome lineup. I'm not sure if you've looked at it. I got very excited on the way here. So excited that I couldn't sleep. I was like up at 4:30 this morning being like, wow, a full day of all these awesome people. And just so many opportunities to learn and connect. The full schedule is posted on the conference website. It's also printed next to the reg desk. So at any point in the day, if you want to just check in with where we're at, please go ahead and do so. There are a couple of things that I want to flag for you. So we do have a lunch break at 12:20, and we also have scheduled breaks throughout the day. Following lunch, there is a network and connection session. Okay, so that's going to be hosted across the hall, and that's also where the gallery space is and the tabling. So we really hope that you can join us back for that at 1:20. We put it after lunch because, you know, when you put like networking at the end of the day, nobody comes. Yeah. So we hope that you'll come to this one and take this opportunity to connect with all the people that are here. We have folks from many parts of this country, and this is such an important moment for us to build connections and work together for the future. We have presentations en français and in English. We do not have translation. Okay, so we're really asking that people do the best they can to follow along. We didn't have the budget for that. And it's a really important note to think about the work that we do as advocates and activists in this space, often working with very little budget, which is something that I've become incredibly used to, but also creates real difficulties in terms of how we can understand each other across these differences. We want to ensure the maximum time possible for our presenters. So the bios for all of the speakers and presenters are posted on the website, so you're welcome to consult that at any time, but we won't be reading full bios when introducing people. We really want to invite you to, throughout the day, check out the gallery space, which also is located across the hall. There are some amazing zines printed out in poster format that made the journey in my backpack from Vancouver. And there's also some artwork that was submitted by local artist Martin. Where are you? Yes. And there's also a photo wall, which is located next to the registration desk. And that also made the journey from Vancouver. A group of high school students who were sharing a project they completed as part of their after school group called Project Red. So if you can take a photo, look up the group. I think they would just get such a thrill out of seeing their artwork appear on social media. So yeah, I was wishing they would like search my bag, but they didn't. Yeah, no. Okay. I think I covered all the things. We're going to have giveaways throughout the day. The draws will happen probably before the lunch break and then after each session in the afternoon. If you're not here, you miss out. But we certainly hope that you'll be able to stay and maybe have the chance to win. Jillian, I'm going to pass it back to you.
So today we also want you to take care of yourselves. So anytime throughout the day, please feel free to get up, stretch your legs, do whatever you need. There are some refreshments in the networking room, a few snacks. Washrooms, female washrooms are down the hall to your right. Gender neutral and accessible washroom is past the hallway to your right. There's also a male washroom there. And if anyone needs to leave the space just to find a little bit more of a quiet place, part of the program that I run here is in doing the wellness programs. We have spaces on campus. So there's one on the 5th floor. It's a bit of a puzzle to get there because you have to take one elevator to get to the ground floor and then another elevator to get to the 5th floor, the security thing. But we welcome you to go to visit the Zenden on the 5th floor and see a little bit also about what the programming, the wellness programming is here. So thank you.
All right, we're almost there. So we have a number of people to thank. This event was possible because of our amazing sponsors and funders. I'm going to list them off for you because I think it's important to do that. We have the Concordia Student Union, Monthly Dignity, OCO Creations, the Fine Arts Students Alliance, Le Fil Rouge, AMI Reusable Pads, Citron Hygiene, the Faculty of Arts and Science, Political Science, and particularly Francesca Scala, Concordia University Wellness, the Concordia Office of Sustainability, the School of Community and Public Affairs Student Association, Création Maripus, Pure Wellness Ambassadors. Thank you to all of you. We're also so grateful to all of you for being here today. Thank you for taking the time to be with us on a Friday. It's not too sunny out there, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you to our amazing participants, our speakers for answering the call when we asked, as well as our artists. It's always like this moment where you breathe and you're putting something out there. Is anyone going to answer? I'm just so grateful that you all did. We also have groups and organizations here that are ready to table during the network and connection hour. I think I've remembered everybody. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I hope you all had a moment to meet somebody new, talk about periods. Love this for a Friday morning. We're going to get started here on our first presentation session. So I would like to first invite our speakers to please come up and join me, and then I'll introduce people. So you can come have a seat here. So the way these first two presentation sessions will work is that I will introduce each of our presenters. They're going to have 10 to 12 minutes to share their presentation. And then afterwards, that's going to leave us with some time for question and answer. But first, we really want to focus on the awesome stories of these speakers. So our first presentation, it is called Periods on Campus. So we're talking about periods on campus, current research, and a vision for menstruation justice in higher ed. So I'm really happy to open this presentation session because it was 3 years ago that my colleague Gabby and I started working on menstrual equity, and it came out in a very grassroots way. We were packing condoms during the pandemic to send out to students, and one of my students said, "Hey, why aren't we doing this with menstrual products?" And we thought, why aren't we? So it really was just a switch that turned on, and it led us to getting some products for free that we were able to distribute. And with that, get some feedback from students saying how important it was. And then it led to another iteration of the project where we were able to collaborate with the Sustainability Action Fund, with this CSU, Student Union, and get quite a bit of money to buy reusable products to distribute. So we've always worked in advocating for menstrual equity on campus. We've worked to get facilities on board to be putting these in the washrooms because we do believe that this shouldn't be coming from the pockets of the students. And also we're really working on distributing products. So whether it's just-in-time products or reusable products. And so we're really, really happy to bring so many people onto the stage who have been really working towards this in their own way. So I'm going to pass it off to Maddie and Ziyana and talking about Beyond the Dot, approaches to menstrual equity on campus. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We're so excited to chat about this with all of you. The average menstruator will bleed 4 to 8 days every month from the time they are 11 to the time they are 51. Next slide. They will use 17,000 period products and spend $6,000 to acquire them. So as everyone in this room knows, and if you didn't know it already, this should make clear that menstruation definitely does have a substantial impact on how menstruators navigate their place in the world. So now let's zoom into the experience of university-aged menstruators. 88% of university-aged menstruators between ages 18 and 24 had trouble affording products for their most recent period. And 33% have been forced to choose between purchasing period products or paying for other essentials in the last year.
Western University Student Union, the USC, elects or hires its executive team in year-to-year full-time positions. As 2021-22 vice presidents for the USC, one of our key priorities was to advance gender justice projects on campus. A major part of this work was advocacy and programming around menstrual equity. In doing so, we learned that for students experiencing period poverty, the supply of menstrual products at food banks can often be short and unreliable, and some locations do not accept period products at all. On the rare occasion that period products are donated, the products are most often tampons. But for a variety of personal, cultural, and religious reasons, many people who menstruate do not use tampons. So in a city like London, Ontario, where Western University is situated, with a large immigrant and refugee population who are regularly utilizing these food banks, these services become inaccessible to them on that basis.
Further to that, our students were prompting us to think about the gender dysphoria that trans and non-binary students might experience if they are stepping into stores or food banks or multiple food banks to acquire period products, understanding the way that cisnormative expectations of who a menstruator is can create uncomfortable or unsafe environments for queer menstruators. So through this process, it became really clear to us that students needed reliable, safe, affirming, consistent access to period products to alleviate and address the financial, the emotional, educational, and social barriers associated with menstruation. And so from there, Free the Dot was born.
So Free the Dot came together through joint expertise. Ziyana and I each brought our skills in advocacy and programming respectively to make this project what it was. As the programming lead on this project, I designed and implemented the Free the Dot program itself. Before officially launching, we started by offering a variety of menstrual products to students at our own on-campus food bank. Our plan was to expand this to include baskets of individually wrapped products in the university community center in all of the washrooms. However, a new wave of COVID quickly halted these plans as the university closed indefinitely. Recognizing that students needed a service like this now more than ever, we quickly shifted to a mail-out program, sending a month's worth of supply products of contraceptives and menstrual products to students' homes for free, using a confidential form and discreet packaging, because periods don't stop because of COVID. Within 6 hours of launching Free the Dot, 500 students had requested products, 800 students within just 2 days. Within a week, requests surpassed the annual demand seen at the food bank for a product of any kind. The overwhelming response prompted us to forge partnerships and secure funding to sustain the program affordably while ensuring high quality and diverse product options. When in-person classes did resume, we placed product baskets in washrooms and continued to mail orders out to students, maintained this time by our student volunteers. And this was a short-term solution to meet student need until Western would ideally pick up the program as a university initiative.
So meanwhile, as the advocacy lead on the project, I prioritized building a culture of community-engaged advocacy to try and secure funding for Free the Dot to continue operating after our time in office wane. So when Free the Dot launched, we created a student petition and a feedback form on the QR codes that was attached to the baskets and washrooms and in the online request forms. So those 800 product requests turned into 800 petition signatures.
This helped us demonstrate just how great the need was among students for access to free menstrual products. We used every advocacy tool at our disposal. So beyond the petition, we also put forward a budget submission prior to the university finalizing their priorities for their annual operating budget. We wrote 2 policy papers oriented around gender justice that we launched campaigns around. And we worked directly with Western's facilities management team to identify buildings for the initiation of a campus-wide launch. Notably, at the time, I also had a seat on Western's Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Action Committee. This was a committee that was put together as part of their response to a student walkout against gender-based violence that had taken place earlier that fall. And in this space, we were able to have conversations about what it meant to create a culture of gender justice on campus and framed the provision of free menstrual products as a way of doing that work. And so in that way, we were actually able to get the provision of free menstrual products in all washrooms included as a recommendation in that committee's final report to the university. So the outcome of all of this, Western University committed for the first time, and unfortunately thus far the only time, to fund the provision of free menstrual products on campus. So that year, Maddie and I were able to secure $800,000 over 2 years to support Free the Dots operations.
And today, 2 years after our terms have concluded with the USC, Free the Dots expanded across 54 buildings on campus. 150 washrooms on campus have citron tampon dispensers in them, while additional washrooms are currently stocked with baskets. Western plans to install dispensers in an additional 200 washrooms in the coming months. Student feedback gathered in December of 2023 with just over 400 responses indicated that there's a strong support for menstrual equity and for the Free the Dot program, with over 86% of respondents strongly agreeing that menstrual equity is an important issue on campus, and over 90% agreeing that Free the Dot products and services are extremely beneficial to them. Students shared anecdotes about how having Free the Dot supply saved them when their periods arrived unexpectedly, and highlighted that the program eased the financial burden associated with menstruation. Notably, trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming students also showed that this program is especially beneficial in that they would otherwise confront stigma in purchasing these products directly from stores or in accessing them from their local food banks.
However, less than 15% of students said that Free the Dot was extremely accessible, and they flagged that washrooms do run out of stock quite quickly. They also highlighted that the citron tampon machines only dispense tampons. And while our initial vision was for a really wide range of high quality products to be available to students, not every Free the Dot washroom offers that variety anymore. So in having conversations with students and with current student union leadership, we've assessed that in the last year, it's student leaders rather than university staff or student union staff who are asked to volunteer their time to restock the menstrual product supply. Ultimately, 2 years after the initial launch of Free the Dots, students see this program as important and as needed, but are citing frustrations with being made responsible for the maintenance of a program that is intended to serve them.
And so in reviewing how Free the Dot was initiated and has since been shaped, there are 3 key takeaways that stand out to us in the development of similar menstrual equity initiatives. The first, these programs must be designed by students and managed by institutions. We believe that part of why Free the Dot had the uptake that it did is because it was designed by students for students. The communications and advocacy campaigns surrounding its launch were also created to encourage a culture of support around menstruation, once again, created by and catered to students. But there's a really fine line between engaging the student community and exploiting their labor to ensure that programs like this can continue running. These initiatives cannot rely solely on student volunteers, and they must instead be sustainably managed by the institution.
So our second key takeaway is that creating an advocacy narrative around programs like this really matters. In building Free the Dot, we learned just how much using the language of the institution and framing our asks in alignment with the institutional strategic goals were really useful for garnering the buy-in that we were looking for. In our case, we did our best to be attentive to the political stakes that Free the Dot was launching in. So as I mentioned at the time, Western was reeling from a September 2021 gender-based violence crisis that took place in a national spotlight. So the student culture on campus at the time really was one of fear and of suspicion of the administration. And understanding this, we pitched Free the Dot as, one, an opportunity for the university to build back goodwill with a student population that had just mobilized a 10,000 plus person community walkout against them that fall. And 2, as a tactic to help build a culture where students can see the needs of menstruators and femme people being prioritized by the university. On the other hand, we framed the conversation with students and with the London, Ontario community quite differently. We talked about the necessity of these products and the absurdity of menstruators having to pay for them when the bodily needs of non-menstruators were met for free in university washrooms.
And finally, if it's not intersectional, it is not worthwhile. In prioritizing a feminist ethics of care, we saw that these programs need to be intersectional and attentive to the various power differentials and existing community supports already in those spaces. So Free the Dot needed to be centered around Western's diverse population. We cater to the needs of people with a range of religious and cultural backgrounds by providing a variety of products other than only tampons to the best of our ability. We understood that for many students, a one-off tampon in a washroom would be of little help when they were struggling to afford their groceries. So we offered a month's worth of supplies upon request. And gender-affirming care was also of great importance. So we worked to have period products in all washrooms so that students would always find themselves with a period product if and when they needed it. At the time of this program's implementation, we had not yet seen an equity census at Western, so we had no real way of knowing how many trans and non-binary students were on our campus. For that reason, it was really important for us that we ensure the products we provided were available in all washrooms for all genders.
All right, I know we're running out of time, so we'll wrap this up quickly, but for some parting thoughts, for us, as we've kind of turned our attention back to a project that we founded over 2 years ago, it's been a lesson in understanding how the vision of an initiative like this both does and doesn't translate in practice. So while the uptake of Free the Dot has far exceeded our initial goals, there's also a lot of work to do in ensuring a variety of products, I should say, remain accessible in all washrooms and in the labor management administration of the program. Community norms around menstruation change really rapidly when programs like Free the Dot are running and make visible in public spaces the importance of dialogue about sexual and reproductive justice and health. When we were students at Western, there really wasn't a whole lot of conversation around menstruation, but today in talking to students, Free the Dot is seen not only as a staple of the student experience at Western, but menstrual equity itself is understood as being a vital value on campus.
We believe that post-secondary institutions are exactly the spaces where transformative conversations about agency and reproductive justice should be happening. Programs like Free the Dot are not just service provision. They create opportunity for dialogue to build a more open and consentful culture around sexual and reproductive health and rights. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope that our learnings from Free the Dot can help to inform your work in menstrual equity research, programming, and advocacy.
Maddie and Ziyana, thank you so much. That was so interesting to learn about Free the Dot and the work that you're doing at Western. Thank you for continuing on with the advocacy. Next, I'd like to invite Mikayla Hunter up for a presentation on menstrual equity, a Manitoban Health Sciences University campus perspective.
As was mentioned, my name is Mikayla Hunter. My pronouns are she, they. I am a non-binary student, recently accepted into the PhD program at the University of Manitoba. So I'll be starting that in the fall. So I'll talk a little bit about the menstrual product, the pilot project that was also run by our student union, which is kind of coincidental. There's something there. But this was a collaborative effort between the University of Manitoba Students' Union and the University of Manitoba Vice President Student Services and Administration. So this pilot project, similar to the one that was done at Western, was to have dispensers available in washrooms across University of Manitoba campuses for people to be able to access free menstrual products. Unfortunately, it was only approved initially for, I think, 10 washrooms. Right? Yeah, so it was only approved for 10. There's way more than 10 washrooms on campus, as you will see. And these dispensers were only installed in women-coded washrooms, and then I think 1 or 2 gender-inclusive washrooms. So we did a little bit of an audit, and by a little bit, I mean we audited all the washrooms on the University of Manitoba campus. There was 503 washrooms on the University of Manitoba campus, and only 10 of them had the dispensers. So Western definitely kicked our butts. That's fine. I'm happy for them. So I specifically was the sole auditor for all 83 washrooms on the Bannatyne campus. I saw every washroom, the good, the bad, the ugly. Thank you. There were some bad ones, but there were some good ones too. So it's fine. But yeah, so it was just me, and I will be, for the purposes of this presentation, just focusing on the 83 that I did, because this is 10 minutes and I don't have time to go over 503 washrooms next. So I've highlighted in red here the dentistry building, the John Buehler Research Center, and the Brody Center, because those are the 3 buildings on the Bannatyne campus that see people from the public coming in. So dentistry, they offer discounted dental services to the public. The John Buehler Research Center, there's a Tim Hortons and a Starbucks, people coming from off the streets, can't blame them. And same with the Brody Center. The John Buehler Research Center is also the home of the Children's Hospital research institute of Manitoba. So people will often come in there with their kids. So there's a lot more family washrooms on that floor. So I'm going to frame my presentation in three really important constructs. These were things that I keep in mind in a lot of my research, but specifically with this work as well, looking at ableism, heterosis normativity, and sexism. So a few definitions for folks. Structural ableism is a system of historical and contemporary policies, institutions, and societal norms and practices that devalue and disadvantage people who are disabled. And this results in things like discriminatory health policies, inequitable access to social resources, also things like menstrual products, lack of access to disability competent and affirming health services, and the devaluing of autonomy in a person's own health decisions. I really do a lot of work in heterosis normativity and healthcare, so that's kind of my jam. So healthcare systems in Canada are, by their very nature, heterosis normative. They are designed to serve people who are cisgender and who are heterosexual. If you are anything outside of that, they aren't designed for you, and people aren't educated to learn how to provide those supports for you. So just some fun, awful stats. 1/3 of all medical schools in the United States require no training on the health of LGBTQ plus people. And the average amount of time spent on learning about LGBTQ plus issues in medical education is 5 hours. And they're usually optional lunch and learns. They're not actually like built into programming. And then finally, structural sexism is the beliefs, policies, and practices at any level of society or organization that is derived on the basis of sex and gender, leading to inequity. And so a lot of these things can manifest in expectations of caregiving responsibilities that result in disadvantages in finances, mental health, physical health, and career opportunities. And structural sexism has long-lasting negative effects on middle-aged and older women, especially. Okay, so with all that said, what does that all mean, Mikayla? It's a very good question. So what happens when spaces that we teach medicine in perpetuate these systems of oppression? What does that say about who is permitted to learn about medicine? About which bodies are important enough to be accommodated for and which bodies are important enough to be intentionally included in spaces? And how might this impact people who seek to learn about health sciences and who menstruate, such as myself? So another important part that I feel really like I should share in this space, I was also on my period when I was conducting this audit. So there was a lot of emotions going on of seeing how little there was available. So there was a pretty even breakdown between the general washrooms on campus. There was about 32, so 39% men coded, slightly more. I was expecting to see more men. Because medicine, 37 women coded, 13% gender inclusive. And then there was a small amount that fell under other where like it just said washroom or didn't really say anything on it. You just knew by talking to people it was a washroom. So there's two washrooms, on my whole campus where you could get free products. One of them was one of the dispensers. The products are not great, but they are there. And then the other one, some wonderful individual had taken the time to tuck a pad into the disposal bin of each stall in a washroom, which I thought was great, but doesn't solve any problems really in the long run. So I hope that they know that they are appreciated. All other menstrual product dispensers were empty. So the dispensers in the newest areas of the campus were listed at 50 cents each, and then they go all the way down to 10 cents each. So we can really see that from 2008 and 1906, where the first building was built, that there has been, at different points in time, intentions to have menstrual product dispensers in washrooms, and assuming the intention to keep them stocked, this has not happened. You can actually see on the one on the far right there, that's from the newest building, and they actually put masking tape over the dispenser to show that there's nothing in there, despite, they're there. So really interestingly and kind of frustratingly, 7 women-coded washrooms had floral arrangements. Of these, I don't know why, of these, 2 had personal grooming products such as lotion and hairspray, and no men-coded, gender-inclusive or other washrooms included decor of any kind. I guess they don't like flowers. Someone had actually brought in tables specifically just to put a tablecloth and a floral arrangement in this bathroom. It's weird. So what really struck me, though, was the structural cissexism, which is a term I haven't really found in the literature yet. So put a button on that. I might be onto something. Who knows? So the Apex Center was the newest building on my campus. They're currently going to be building a new one. So I've been on their backs a bit like, what are you doing for menstrual products? But the construction was completed in 2008. And all women-coded washrooms in the Aprotex Center had menstrual products built into the walls. So there was structural intention to actually like cut I don't know, I want to say crevice is not the right word, but like something into the wall where they would put this dispenser. So there was a structural intention that this was going to be in here and not in the men's rooms or the gender inclusive washrooms. So again, these were all built with the intention of having menstrual products available, and it was also made with the needs of cis women who menstruate in mind. They weren't considering the needs of gender diverse people and trans people in these considerations, which in 2008 I would have hoped for a little better, but maybe I'm optimistic. So again, here's the taped over one, and then you can actually see that the other one on a different floor actually had a quarter still in there, so someone was attempting to use it. And again, I was on my period at this time. I was very emotional, and I high-key cried because I felt so bad that there was some person who needed a product and they couldn't get it, and they tried and they would just left their quarter in there. So feel bad. So another structural thing that I noticed, that sanitary disposal bins were either built into the wall of the building, much like the dispensers, or were affixed to the side of the wall. And these sanitary disposal bins were only present in women-coded washrooms, again, and no men-coded or gender-inclusive washrooms had those built into the walls or on the stalls. So this further perpetuates the notion of who does and does not menstruate, and potentially puts trans men and gender-diverse folks who use the men's room at risk of being harassed. Awesome. Terrible stats again. So nearly 1 in 10 trans respondents reported that someone denied them access to a washroom in the past year of a survey that was done in the United States. Survey respondents also reported being verbally harassed, physically attacked, or sexually assaulted when accessing a public washroom. And more than half of the survey respondents avoided using a public washroom because they were afraid of confrontations or other problems they might experience. It's sometimes a little bit easier to like hold it if you have to pee, but if you're menstruating, you don't really have that option. So what does this say for trans and gender diverse people who need to access these washrooms but have to deal with these really serious things that can happen, especially in the current political context, which I won't talk about too much because I will cry again. So studies have shown that trans and gender inclusive policies regarding washroom access have absolutely no link to safety concerns for cis people. I don't think I can say that more emphatically. As we saw in the previous slide, it really is trans and gender diverse people who bear the brunt of those safety risks and not cis people, despite what a lot of the policies and media coverage would have you believe. The science says otherwise, and we should listen to the science probably. One study in particular found that transgender and gender non-binary teens who were subject to washroom or locker room restrictions had a prevalence of 36% of experiencing sexual assault. So the brunt is really on people who are even further marginalized. So menstruation is not a binary issue, and menstruation is not a cis-only issue. Conclusion, perfect timing, we love it. So structural decisions about washroom design and the availability of menstrual products associated facilities perpetuate ableism, heterosis normativity, and sexism on university campuses. And structural cis-sexism is especially present in the lack of meaningful inclusion of gender diverse and trans people. And these decisions tell us about who is and is not expected to attend these campuses. So again, I was menstruating at the time of this, and as a non-binary person, it was really troubling to see that like I wasn't meant to be here in many, many ways. And to see it in this way and something that I can't control was awful. I do have some good news, though. It's not as good as all of the dispensers that Western has. But I took my findings and I brought them to the dean of my faculty of health sciences. And I was like, hey, Dr. Nickerson, this is awful. I would like 2 more dispensers on my campus, please. And they installed one other one in a women's washroom and one other in a men's washroom. So we officially have one in a men's washroom. And I'll leave you on that note. Perfect timing. I need my email address.
Thank you so much, Mikayla. That was really, really interesting. And I think, again, these conversations are really highlighting what's happening across the country. And as we learn what's going on in different institutions, it really empowers us to bring that back to our home institutions to say, hey, this is happening. I know at Concordia, we talk about being a next gen university. And I mean, getting on the train of menstrual equity, I don't think that's very next gen. I think it's like, let's just catch up. But hey, it's always good to help by informed policy. So Tasnim, I would like to invite you to the stage, please. Just to speak about period equity at the University of Saskatchewan. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm Tasnim, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'll be presenting on period equity at the University of Saskatchewan as the campus's Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Project Specialist. This presentation essentially summarizes my honors thesis that I just presented within the USAS's Women's and Gender Studies program that I am recently graduating from, and it is a combination of the campus work that I do as both a staff and a student. And so before I get started, I want to acknowledge that I am an immigrant settler from Treaty 6 territories on the homeland of Métis and First Nations land. And speaking on the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation space, I recognize Indigenous women, Indigiqueer, and Two-Spirit individuals face high rates of period inequity on this land. And I'm mindful of this as I strive to include their perspectives into my work. So, USAS Period Equity Project launched in 2023, installing free vending dispensers with pads and tampons in over 70 washrooms across campus in more than 20 buildings. Thank you. And as its director, I am just so honored to be part of a campus community that has supported this initiative, driven by advocacy from students, staff, and faculty at large, with bold commitments from the university administration. And yet, my thesis essentially questioned, why did it take more than a century of USAS existence for free period products to function? This work involved literature reviews, lived experiences, and surveys. So if we start with literature reviews, we can see that in Canada, 1 in 5 menstruators may face affordability issues for period products within the next year. That's 20% of menstruators. Period inequity is linked to intersectional poverty, with more harm happening towards youth, single moms, Black, Indigenous people of color, immigrants, people who are homeless, disabled, queer in remote areas, and more. We also know that menstrual equity ignorance often starts in school settings when boys are implicitly taught that this is just an affirmation of femaleness, leaving them confused. And then essentially this knowledge absence carries into adulthood and creates all of the problems that we know about ignorance on menstrual equity at large. Additionally, trans men and non-binary individuals face challenges in restrooms, lacking proper accommodations. What may seem like a small oversight, such as the absence of disposal bins in men's washrooms, actually reinforces gender biases, making trans bodies less visible. So I want to talk about a little bit about how we landed on the Period Equity Project by discussing my lived experiences as a menstruator that essentially drove me to be an advocate for menstrual equity. But one thing that I do want to note has been significant within my experiences is that I have had roles in student governance at USASC, and as well as my additional work experience as a staff, I ended up finding unique opportunities to deeply engage myself in this movement. So this is a timeline of how I've been involved on campus in this work. In 2020, I was hired as the University of Saskatchewan Students' Union's Women's Center Coordinator, and I noticed issues like the center's reliance on donations for period products, and also that students needed to directly come to the center to access these products, where I essentially understood that working closely with struggling students, I directly saw how period equity hindered education opportunities. However, I also noticed that my influence on student union advocacy as a coordinator was very limited to how student unions are structured within their hierarchies, and comparing the coordinator roles to often the executive roles and how they work. But the following year, I was fortunate enough to win an election as the president of the student union. I campaigned and became the 8th woman president in the 115 years of the union's history, and the first woman of color in this role. Thank you so much. I was able to lead efforts for advocating for free menstrual hygiene products. This included a lot of backing of student calls, student advocacy, and meetings with the USask administration. And this advocacy actually led to the first ever commitment of free period products on the University of Saskatchewan campus. Thank you so much. And now, as the USask Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Project Specialist, I lead and develop the USask Period Equity Project. This is what our dispensers look like on campus. It's a historic win for feminist and anti-oppressive efforts, and we are building a legacy on campus. I'm optimistic, but also a little bit optimistic, but also a little bit cautious in certain ways, with some further investigation that I did within my thesis. So my thesis analyzed menstrual equity stakeholders on the USask campus, including the USask administration and the USSU, which is the University of Saskatchewan Students' Union, along with their partners, which are the departments and student groups, where I was able to showcase who supported menstrual equity at each level. So I found that historically, the administration roles were held by cis men, while departments like Women's and Gender Studies with women, gender diverse individuals, and some cis male allies vocalized period equity, however, had very less influence on how university funds are allocated. Similarly, on the student union side, presidents historically were cis men, whereas student groups leading period equity initiatives like the USask Menstrual Project, Menstruation Redefined, they were mainly made up of women and gender diverse individuals. So I linked this to how the USask Period Equity Project became realized. Because what ended up happening was that I, as a woman USSU president, was able to work with the USask administration and our specifically Dr. Irene, the USask's current provost. We supported this initiative simultaneously, had these conversations. However, this is a rare circumstance. Historically, two women had not been in these roles simultaneously together. And what I think is that equity initiatives should not depend solely on the gender identities of those in positions of power, and institutions must hold responsibility to these circumstances. An article that I found that directly correlated with my work stressed the collaboration between student unions and the administration in moving forward period equity on campuses. Success came when student governance folks had more resources and were able to advocate compared to failed efforts from smaller student groups that did lack these types of connections. Students and student governments within that central composition were able to navigate and access the administration better. And so this is where I recognize that my influence as a former USSU president was so important in enabling this collaboration with the administration for this commitment. I have several testimonials from our campus folks, student groups that tried period advocacy by meeting with other groups, custodial teams, college deans, only to be redirected. There's a blame shift cycle. And this was often very tiring of a process for smaller student groups. The lack of access to period products is a disruption to work days and social life, is what people on campus are saying. And that we need to include cis men in these conversations, educating them on period products so that we are not afraid to say that we're on our periods and not have to hide products as well. And it's been echoed that this project needs to extend to all washrooms on campus in order to destigmatize and create less shame. I want to think about, as I end, how do we ensure period equity continues at USask? And I think much of this is complementary to period equity at other post-secondary institutions too. I recommend sustainability. Financially, we need more dispensers on campuses, securing the funding and ensuring the project continues after current leaders like myself are move on from these initiatives, that we need implemented policy changes. And environmentally, we could explore additional eco-friendly options like period underwears and menstrual cups, along with pads and tampons. Secondly, period education is crucial. We need to acknowledge the impact that it has on women and trans folks through dismantling stigma, through allyship, and also, the university must uphold its decision to install menstrual product dispensers in men's washrooms and continue efforts to combat transphobia. Thirdly, gender equity. women leaders and gender diverse individuals across campus need structural support at decision-making tables with meaningful inclusion, and CISMES must continue supporting this movement as allies. And with that, thank you for listening to my presentation.
Bonjour. Hi, everyone. I will do my presentation in French, but I did the slides in bilingual. And maybe if I have the time, I'll do a little bit of English to summarize what I was saying in French. Donc, je suis Alissa Lauriault, je suis conseillère en équité, diversité et inclusion à l'ETS depuis 4 ans bientôt cet été. Et je suis ici, mais en remplacement de celle qui devait présenter, qui était vraiment l'initiatrice de nos actions en lien avec l'équité menstruelle à l'ETS. So I'm here, but I'm replacing someone else who was supposed to be here, was really the one who initiate all our action at ETS. Pour ceux et celles qui connaissent pas très bien l'ETS, donc c'est une école spécialisée en génie, donc on forme des ingénieurs. On est situé pas très loin d'ici, dans Griffintown. On fait partie du réseau des universités du Québec. Et je le précise parce que c'est une école d'ingénieurs, donc on a 24% d'étudiantes sur le campus. Donc c'est quand même un contexte où on est vraiment dans un milieu à prédominance masculine. So I was saying that we are in an engineering school, and so it's predominantly male students. We have only like 24% of students, female students at ETS. And so it's important to understand it in the context of this presentation. Donc, tout commence par Isabelle Desjardins-David, donc qui est professeure enseignante à l'ETS depuis quelques années, et qui vient sur le campus une journée avec sa fille et qui sa fille finalement débute ses règles ce jour-là. Et donc, il est assez tôt cette journée-là sur le campus parce qu'on a une pharmacie vraiment à côté du campus et la pharmacie est fermée. Et donc, elle se dirige vers les salles de bain pour trouver un tampon, une serviette. Et donc, finalement, c'est pas si simple que ça. Donc, je pense qu'il y a plusieurs présentations qui ont présenté à quel point il est pas dans la salle de bain. Mais finalement, les distributeurs, c'est pas toujours efficace. Et donc, ça l'amène à prendre conscience de ce défi-là d'accessibilité des produits menstruels sur le campus. Et donc, elle se met à réunir autour de cette question-là plusieurs personnes. Donc, d'autres personnes du personnel enseignant, des membres du personnel, dont moi, évidemment, mais également notre équipe du service du développement durable, des étudiants et étudiantes également sur la question. Puis, on finit par se réunir puis se demander, qu'est-ce qu'on fait, qu'est-ce qu'on fait sur cette question-là à l'ETS? Qu'est-ce qu'on pourrait faire? So I was saying that Isabelle was on the campus with her daughter, and her daughter began her periods that day. It was very early, so the pharmacy just beside it was closed, and so she was searching for menstrual product, and it was not so easy. So she began to think, okay, what can we do? What can we do about this? And she reunited a little committee with other professors, with members of the staff of the GS and students. Et donc, la première étape, la première chose qu'on s'est dit, on va questionner un peu notre communauté étudiante. On va demander un peu, c'est quoi finalement, quelles sont les habitudes, quelles sont les préférences également. De celles des personnes qui utilisent les produits menstruels. C'est vraiment Isabelle qui a mené cette consultation-là il y a à peu près 2 ans. Et donc, j'ai pas pu avoir le détail des résultats du sondage. Je les ai pas en tête. Mais c'est sûr on a voulu poser des questions aussi sur les produits réutilisables, les produits non jetables, parce qu'on est dans une dynamique à l'ETS. On travaille beaucoup sur le développement durable. Et donc, c'est très important d'avoir cette question-là aussi en tête dans nos initiatives. Mais il y avait quand même, on voyait évidemment une plus grande utilisation de produits jetables que non jetables. Puis il y avait quand même, on posait des questions, auriez-vous quand même un intérêt là si on vous offrait des produits non jetables? Donc on a fait cette première consultation-là. So we did first we did a survey to just know a little bit more about the preferences, the habits of people who use the menstrual product. And we had this idea of reusable product because we are working a lot on environment at ETS. So it was important for us to have this in mind also. Donc, on s'est donné 3 grands objectifs. Donc, le premier, l'accès et l'équité. Donc, s'assurer qu'on touchait les questions notamment d'accessibilité aux produits menstruels et l'équité. Ensuite, on s'est dit, il y a de l'éducation probablement à faire sur ce sujet-là dans une université que je l'ai précisé, la prédominance masculine. Donc, vraiment, on travaille depuis quelques années à s'assurer que notre campus est plus inclusif. Donc, on s'est dit, ça doit faire partie de notre projet. Et puis, je l'ai dit, donc, l'environnement, donc, quand même, trouver une façon d'encourager l'utilisation de produits réutilisables, moins nocifs pour l'environnement. Et donc, vous allez voir, il y a plusieurs actions qui ont été faites qui touchent ces différents objectifs-là. Mais Isabelle, donc, s'est mis vraiment à la recherche de fournisseurs. On est allé chercher du financement. Puis, tout ça faisait partie, évidemment, de la cohérence qu'on voulait avoir avec nos trois objectifs. So we gave us 3 main objectives, so access and equity, so to work on accessibility of the menstrual project on our campus. Also education, because we realized that maybe we had to talk a little bit more about this subject on our campus. And also environment, as I said, that we were very sensitive about projects that were not that do not harm our environment. Donc, ça fait à peu près 2 ans, donc on travaille là-dessus. Isabelle était déjà très impliquée dans notre banque alimentaire à l'ETS, donc elle a commencé par voir si elle pouvait introduire les produits menstruels dans la banque alimentaire. Donc, depuis 2 ans maintenant, on donne, et là c'est des produits jetables, là, mais donc soit serviettes ou tampons qui sont là à la disposition des personnes qui veulent en prendre dans la banque alimentaire. On a organisé il y a 1 an une conférence avec le fil rouge qui, je crois, va être présent aujourd'hui. Là. Donc, on a organisé cette conférence-là l'année dernière. On a eu quand même une 30aine de participantes. Ce qui était ressorti, c'était vraiment le commentaire qui est ressorti, c'est merci de commencer à en parler, tout simplement, déjà en partant. Donc, merci d'avoir organisé cette conférence-là. Évidemment, on parlait d'équité, mais on parlait beaucoup des différents types de produits menstruels, des effets sur la santé des femmes également, des effets sur l'environnement. Ensuite, on a fait un premier groupe d'achat pour des produits menstruels non jetables, donc d'où la recherche de fournisseurs. Donc, Isabelle s'est déplacée, elle a rencontré une entreprise qui fabrique ici au Québec les produits. Donc, on a réussi à avoir une entente avec le financement qu'on est allé chercher dans le Fonds de développement durable de l'association étudiante. On a pu donc offrir des culottes menstruelles. Donc à coût réduit, donc c'était pas gratuit, mais on demande à coût moindre. Et c'est parti très très rapidement. On a mis un article dans l'infolettre aux étudiants et étudiantes. Il a fallu fermer le formulaire très très rapidement parce que ça évidemment en tout cas le premier groupe qu'on a voulu partir, tous les produits sont partis très rapidement. On en a fait une deuxième vague. Également, donc à l'automne, donc un deuxième pour le groupe d'achat. Ça s'adresse autant aux étudiantes qu'aux membres du personnel de l'ETS, donc on n'a pas fait de distinction. Seulement, on a fait une distinction sur les prix. Les membres du personnel payent quand même un montant un petit peu plus élevé, mais c'était moins dispendieux pour les étudiants et étudiantes. So I was saying that one of the first action we did was to give access to menstrual product through the food bank. Because Isabelle was already very involved at the food bank at UTS. And so after that, we organized a conference on menstrual, reusable menstrual product with Le Fil Rouge, who we'll talk today later. And so what I was saying is that we had like 30% at this conference, and female students who were there were just really, okay, thank you to begin to talk about this at UTS. It's not something that we talk a lot in this engineering school. And also, we did put in place purchasing group for non-disposable menstrual product. And so it was not free, but we asked it had to pay a little bit. It was for students, but also for staff member. It was very, very popular. We just put just an article, and in just a couple of hours, all were already purchased. So we did a second group, this late fall. Donc voilà. Et en fait, à travers tout ça, évidemment, on avait, je trouvais ça super intéressant. It was very interesting, all of those presentations. Parce que bon, évidemment, on s'était posé des questions sur les distributrices dans les toilettes. On avait déjà approché l'équipe de la gestion des actifs immobiliers à l'ETS. On travaillait déjà sur un projet pour avoir plus de toilettes non genrées à l'ETS. C'était vraiment un enjeu. On en avait une seule sur tout le campus, une toilette individuelle. Donc là, on travaille à avoir un peu plus de toilettes non genrées, mais chaque projet est un projet de toilette individuelle qui est aussi accessible, donc sans obstacle. Et à travers ces réflexions-là qu'on faisait déjà avec l'équipe de l'immobilier, il y a des toilettes qui ont été repensées et aménagées pour pas qu'il y ait d'obstacles entre la toilette et les lavabos, justement pour permettre l'utilisation de produits menstruels non jetables, pour faciliter ça. Donc, ça s'est inscrit là-dedans. So I was saying that it has what we are doing has also an impact on the design of certain individual toilets to facilitate the use of non-disposable menstrual products. Et donc, notre administration est en train de justement se poser des questions sur la distribution gratuite là, dans les salles de bain. J'ai pas encore de nouvelles à annoncer à ce sujet-là, mais la réflexion est en cours. Bon, mais merci beaucoup. Ça m'a fait plaisir d'être là.
Merci, Alissa. Thank you to all of our presenters for sharing the amazing work that's happening on these campuses. We'd like to invite everyone up here, and we have about 25 minutes to ask questions for anyone in the audience. Also, we invite people online. I believe there is a chat function that Gabby is monitoring. Tasnim, would you like to come up front and anyone can be asked questions? Is there anyone here who has a question for any of our wonderful, amazing speakers? All right. Question number 1.
Thanks so much, everybody. This was super insightful and really powerful stuff. I'm wondering if anyone can share insights to the adoption of reusables in any of the programs. I know that it's the goal and we'd love to see it. So I just wondered if anyone had any success with incorporating them into programs.
We started to do this a little bit when we were mailing products out to students and in our food bank as well. We heard a lot of feedback from students that they have wanted to try reusable products, but they're more costly. They're higher cost upfront than pads or tampons are. So it was always inaccessible for some of the students we heard from. So we offered Diva cups. I think that's as far as we got, but we looked into period underwear as well. We just didn't quite have time in our term. But there was definitely a lot of interest from students. And it was something that the food bank was exploring as well, just to have available for students if they wanted it. But it's definitely something, especially on our campus, looking at sustainability too, that students had a lot of interest in. So we hope that Western is still doing. I'm not quite sure actually if they are still doing that, but students liked it.
I can actually speak a little bit to that about what's happening in Concordia, because I think that is one of the things that makes our program different. We did start off with reusable and just-in-time products, but because of the need and our partnership with the Sustainability Action funding and the Concordia Student Union, really using the funds that we got to purchase reusable supplies was a main thing. So we did get about $50,000. We distributed Diva cups. We had all 3 types of them. And then we also worked with local manufacturers, Oko Creations, so that we had a number of different reusable pads. And also the CSU here has a $10,000 line on their budget committed to buying reusable products. So although it doesn't go very far, we have about 50,000 students at Concordia. It is a start, and it is something that we will continue to work on, having the access to both the reusable products, but also the just in time, so that we're meeting all of the needs.
I would echo some of the comments that has been said, but in terms of the University of Saskatchewan context, it's critical that reusable products would be used if they were accessible, because specifically having worked in the student union space as the former women's center coordinator there, we did have initiatives, kind of one-off initiatives here and there of allowing students to come and grab Diva cups, and they would be gone by like midday, essentially. So clearly there's a critical need for them. And I think with reusable products, that factor of peer education comes into place, because how to use Diva cups in the first place, as menstruating people, having access to that knowledge on our anatomies and things like that, I think needs to be supported in that kind of comprehensive sex ed, health education conversations as well.
Thank you. I know we had a question coming from online.
So I'm Gabby. I'm going to read the online question. Hello, thank you for your presentations and work. I am curious why studies in general on menstruation in universities often limit age demographics to an average age range of 18 to 25 years old. I realize this is primarily the age group of undergrad students, but as a grad student, I often wonder why menstruators above 25, and especially those of us who are in our 30s, are, in quote, forgotten in these studies and initiatives. Perhaps your studies already do take a broader age group into consideration. I ask these questions with a great sense of respect and appreciation for the work you are all already doing, which is so important.
So I didn't present about it, but we also did a survey, which I see like Chloe's looking at me like, yes, talk about the survey. So we did a survey that was open to all faculty, staff, and students at the University of Manitoba, regardless of age. I think our lower cutoff was 18, just because it gets a little bit more difficult ethically when you're working with people under the age of consent. But anyone who is 18 and up. And I think like the oldest respondent we had was like in their 70s or something. So as long as you had experienced menstruation on campus at some point in time, you were able to fill out the survey. So we were also then able to get responses from people who had previously menstruated on campus and who have like gone through menopause, and even then getting responses back talking about the lack of supports for people who are going through perimenopause and menopause itself. So we got to get a more fulsome scope of it in that way. Our interim report will hopefully have some results about that. But yeah, I do take that. Like, I'm also a grad student in my 30s too. And I'm like, yeah, I still have that. So yeah, I definitely feel that.
Well, for our survey that we did, we just opened it to everyone in the student community. So we didn't, I'm not so sure we even asked for the age of the persons who were responding to the survey.
I would say similarly, when it came to Free the Dot, both in terms of our feedback and our community engaged advocacy process, it was just anyone who was a registered undergraduate student that could kind of contribute their voice or could access Free the Dot. I definitely agree with the person who offered the question that anytime we've done secondary research, it's an 18 to 24-ish sort of range that we're given stats for, which doesn't really give us a fulsome understanding of how some of the mature students who might be in undergrad may be sort of experiencing period poverty or their sorts of voices and perspectives. We're now both graduate students and of course, still menstruate. It's still, a thing. Free the Dot specifically was run by our undergraduate student union and so was sort of designed for undergrads more specifically. But of course, anyone who was in those washroom spaces could access it. And we didn't have any sort of limit on who could access the request form either. I think we did get a fair amount of graduate students using our programming as well, because we didn't actually restrict it that way.
We also didn't restrict the prioritization based on age. We worked with menstruators of all ages as they are targeted and prioritized demographic, but also we seek to always, create that space of education through allyship of folks that are non-menstruators too. But I do think this question is really important considering that there is clearly barriers to research when it comes to period inequity, women's health, trans care, and such in the research space. So this is a very critical question to be asked. And I would say that there needs to be developing work on this for sure.
Thank you all for sharing that. And I think as we were planning the conference over the past year, that is something that we talked about, maybe part 2, maybe stay tuned next year. Maybe we'll be coming at you perimenopause and menopause on campus. Who knows? Do we have more questions?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the brilliant presentations, although I came a bit late, but I heard a lot of things. So I just want to ask something on the topic of sustainability. And I am representing an organization based in Nigeria, the JT Fahmy Foundation. And basically what we do is to advocate, educate, and just try to encourage teenagers, basically teenage girls, on their menstrual health and hygiene. And basically we've been doing a lot of work from 2020 on going to communities, to schools, giving out sanitary products alongside our partners. But now we've started to consider sustainability more seriously, because when we go to these communities, we give them a sanitary pad that's going to last them for like a month, and that's it. And now as much as we want to do more, the funds are not quite there. So the question is, we're looking to do more partnership and get more reusable sanitary pads and even cups. That's also another question I have. How do you tell these girls? Because some of them, when you speak to them, you find out what do they use. They use things like rags, like clothes, to manage their menstruation. And we're going with something that looks similar to what they already use. And we're telling them this is a better choice. How do you encourage these girls, or how do you do more training to help them use it in a way that's right, in a way that would not also, increase the risk of infection when they're managing their periods? Then also about the use of sanitary cups, because we are very careful because we work with teenage girls, right? And sanitary cups is not something that's very popular in Nigeria. I promise you, I feel like I did not know anything about sanitary cups until in my 20s, because I never saw it. I never heard of it until, I started to go more online and do more research on menstrual health and hygiene. And so is it something we could encourage these teenage girls to start using? Is it something that's safe for them? I don't know so much about it. I personally do not use it for personal reasons. But if we want to start, because it's not there, but it's also a very good sustainable option, right? Because they can use it for a longer period of time and just, clean it up and all of that. So is it something that's safe for these teenage girls? Is it something we can introduce to them? And yeah, I feel like those are basically my question on the whole issue of sustainability, the period, underwears, the reusable sanitary pads, and the sanitary cups. What would you say? Should we encourage these girls to use it? And is it safe for, especially the sanitary cups, for us to introduce it to these girls from the age of 9, 8 years old? You get people that start menstruating as early as that, to 8, to 12, to 13. So I just want to hear your opinion on this. Thank you very much.
So I will say that I know absolutely nothing about safety about these kinds of things. Is it on? Okay, cool. I'd highly recommend, this sounds like a really silly answer, but just researching it, because I honestly, off the top of my head, don't know all of those answers. And I don't know if necessarily anyone here has done specifically health-based research about that kind of thing. I don't correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if we're necessarily the people who would know about that kind of thing, unfortunately. So I think that there's a lot of really good resources out there online that you could access. You look like you desperately want to say something. Okay.
And distributes reusable cups. So we're going to pass it to the expert here. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you for all of your presentations. So in regard to, we've been in research and development as well as working with academic partners around the world from the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, as well as Columbia University, and really looking at how do we create sustainable products that are healthier. And I can tell you that menstrual cups, from research in Western Kenya to research projects that were supported by funding from the National Institute of Health in the U.S., there is a statistically significant reduction in the incidence of bacterial vaginosis with the use of menstrual cups. And, we've developed here in Canada, working with the University of Toronto and now McMaster University, looking at new products that will really kind of enhance the vaginal biome, really making sure that these are really high quality products, accessible, because they can be expensive, but always looking at opportunities to partner with organizations. We work with lots of international NGOs, getting these products into refugee settlements as well as, urban slums. Let's call it the last mile, and always provide really comprehensive education, because it's so vital, especially if you're going to be introducing to, 13 or 14-year-olds. The education is so vital in regard to menarche and understanding what's happening with their body. But we are here now. Definitely speak with you after. So lots of information, and certainly look forward to speaking with each of you as well.
Thank you for knowing the science behind those things for us.
Thank you, Lisa.
Tasnim? Thank you for that scientific explanation. I think that's really critical. I would say from a more classroom perspective, having worked in sexual health education spaces, more so that the concept of scaffolded learning is really important. That means that teaching reproductive health, sex ed, and things like that in a step-by-step process based on age, what is age appropriate. Like, we teach about consent at a very young age, and then moving on to other forms of sexual and reproductive health matters as youth progress into the later years. So I think when it comes to, when it's appropriate to, teach these types of, reusable products and these types of products at large, it's a matter of, I think, again, we're always trying to prioritize more research around this. And so creating those types of curriculums that include reusable products on top of pads and tampons, and again, how to use them, having more access to knowledge about anatomies in classrooms, I think is very critical on how we navigate these topics going forward.
All right. From the same foundation as well. This is for everyone actually that presented. Very, very beautiful presentations, by the way. We've been trying to go into like low-income communities. That just seems like impact. But like more than ever, I've been thinking about even hearing the presentations from today, the initiative of actually like installing things in the, in the washrooms and stuff. That makes a lot of sense. We've never really thought about that. And now I'm thinking more than ever, like, how do you get universities to key in to, because there's lots of universities in Nigeria, even in low-income communities as well. How do you get them to key into this? And in terms of, because someone said something about, student created but like managed by the institution. How does the institution manage this? And also like, how do you get them to key into this initiative? Because I'm pretty sure like they have to be the one like cutting the funds and stuff like that. So how do you get Nigerian university man thinking about this stuff in my head? So how do you guys do it?
Yeah, great question. So as for how we kind of, at least in our context, tried to frame our advocacy asks to the university, a lot of it had to do with combing through their institutional strategic plan, looking at all of the, targeted action plans they created along their particular priorities and finding the language that aligned with what they'd said they already wanted to do, and then using that to kind of guide the way we told the story to them, if that makes sense. We also we're doing our best to pay attention to what kind of media our institution wanted to create for themselves, kind of like what their public relations needs were at the moment. I spoke a little bit about how they had very much just, been in a national spotlight related to a gender-based violence crisis at the time that we were launching Free the Dot. And so articulating to them that, hey, like you really do need a good news story related to gender justice was also a lot of how we were able to pitch this as being important. Obviously, this is something they should be doing regardless of whether or not they need good PR around gender justice. But, kind of tapping into those incentives, trying to communicate why the institution will benefit from the project was a big part of how we sort of tried to guide people who are making those decisions along that pathway. You also asked a little bit about that created by students, managed by institutions part. I would say that's still part of what the struggle from a student advocacy perspective looks like on Western's campus. As we were sort of preparing this presentation, we had conversations with both current students and current leadership of the student union. And it was flagged for us that one of the things students are struggling with is being made responsible to restock the washrooms. And it was really important to us in the design of the program that we made sure we were advocating for these products to be available in all washrooms of all genders, and that the actual dispensers be in washrooms of all genders. But something we learned also is that when students who are femme presenting were made responsible for then going into men coded spaces to restock those baskets, that it also kind of created potential for them to experience harm or discomfort. And so that's, I think, part of why we so strongly feel like it does need to be kind of managed by the institution when it comes to those restocking processes, and when it comes to ensuring that it's not student labor that these programs run on. So I would say twofold answer to your question. It does really need to be the institutions that take on that responsibility so that students aren't exploited in those ways. And we're still very much considering the safety and comfort of students in the program delivery process. And then in actually convincing the institution, I would say turning to institutional rhetoric and making a case for why it would benefit them is a lot of how we tried to do our work.
I just wanted to add to that while we were creating this narrative for the university, we also went right to the students. And we engaged with the different student councils on campus. We engaged with students running the food banks and the ethnocultural support services and the indigenous student services. And we really worked with all of these individual groups to engage with their own communities and networks. And they kind of spread the word themselves to engage their own groups. And I think that was really powerful and effective for us. And it also gave us really good feedback about what the program needed to be successful. Because the students know exactly what they need from the program. So it won't be successful if we don't do that. So it mobilized the program, it mobilized students really effectively and created this like campus-wide movement kind of, but it also made sure the program was exactly what students wanted from it.
Okay, I'll go super fast. Academics like research and they like statistics. You got to see a bunch of presentations today. So like there are like demonstrable, like successful stories. Like Western University is a great example. University of Manitoba, we're not doing so great comparatively. I thought we were doing pretty okay. We're not. But what I did to convince the dean of my faculty to install 2 new dispensers is I basically sent him what I just presented today. Said, hey, here's the facts. What are you going to do about it? And when you're presented with the facts in a way that like it's there, it's in front of you in an email, you can't deny it. Having those facts to go back on, they were like, yeah, absolutely. It was super easy. I didn't have to ask too much. And I think a lot of us have done a lot of good looking at literature to say like, these are things that happen when you have access to these products freely. So I would say like really relying on the things that other people have done, do a survey if you have the capacity to do it, but really just like there are studies that say when you provide access to these supplies for people, these are the really good outcomes that can come about. These are the things that you can avoid happening. So I think a combination of like using the way that they want to appear to other people and like the rest of society, and also like looking at research and saying like, these are the things, these are the facts. So.
universities care a lot about how they're perceived. So their public relations is very important. So when you have a core central student group telling them we need these products, we need menstrual equity, period equity on campuses, it creates political pressure. And that is very critical when we see most of us have a background in this work that started as students and some of us in the student governance space too. So that student mobilization piece is so critical. Students make up the largest demographics on a campus. We pay into these institutions and they need to give back to us. And so I think, again, amplifying these student voices, diverse student perspectives, I think has a lot of potential to make post-secondary institutions listen to us when we are saying that these are very critical needs. It's 2024. Let's be real.
Thank you, everyone. This was an incredible panel or incredible discussion. I think it gives us a lot to think about, a lot to, bring into the next phases of our own projects. So I'd like to thank each of you for being part of our panel here today.